Hello everyone, this is Yaneli. I am going to be presenting to you my final guidance lecture of this term, in which we will go through and discuss the following. So my objective for it is to prepare you to submit your A4 final draft of your critical analysis essay, and I will do this by reviewing the prompt, the rubric, and a student example essay. So let's go ahead and get started. This is an image that I have been providing for you all term in previous guidance presentations, and it discusses the writing process. So at first we started with pre-writing, then drafting, and now we've entered revising, editing, and you're about to publish it. And in terms of revising and editing, you really started that last week, and you'll continue through to the end of this week. Publishing will be you submitting your final draft to Brightspace in order for it to be graded. So that's where we are at in the writing process stage. So let's talk about preparing for your A4 final draft. One of the best ways to do that is to review the assignment directions, and this is something that I have gone through in numerous presentations in the past, and emphasized on how important it is to read the assignment directions and the rubric. So we're going to do the same thing, just a little bit different in the sense that I'm going to be comparing and contrasting the 5-3 first draft directions to the 8-4 final draft directions. And this is because you have to think that when we were in week 5, you had learned a lot of information, but it has been 3 weeks and you've since then learned even more information. So the expectations have slightly changed. You're not really writing a new essay, you're just revising your first draft and adding in new information that you have since then learned, not only from the last 3 weeks of the term, but then also from feedback that I have given you to help you improve your first draft and make that into a final draft, which is the A4 assignment. So let's start with comparing and contrasting the overviews. I have labeled here at the top what the 5-3 first draft overview looked like. And as you can see, it looks a lot shorter than the 8-4 final draft. And I'm not going to go through and read everything. I just want to notice or point out some key differences for you. I do want you to go and read the overview on your own, but big things to note in terms of changes. In your 8-4 final draft, you will be going through and revising your first draft to make this a critical analysis essay, in which you will include your thesis statement. Remember, you have since week 6 written your thesis statement. So now you will include it in your final draft. And you're going to be supporting your paper, to making sure that the thesis is going through and being supported throughout the entire essay. So when you go through and you read these overviews on your own, ask yourself, what similarities and differences can I spot? One of the big key differences, though, will be including your thesis statement and making sure that it is supported throughout your paper. So let's move on to comparing and contrasting the prompts. So again, I have added for you the 5-3 first draft prompt and the A4 final draft prompt. They have a very similar layout. They have the introduction, body, conclusion, and it tells you exactly what to include in each. Some of the similarities that stand are, the assignment length in terms of having your introduction, 3 body paragraphs, a conclusion, and key differences is you'll notice that in the introduction it does ask you to include your engaging thesis now, and in your body paragraphs you'll notice that it asks you to support your thesis throughout the body paragraphs, and you'll use the thesis that you wrote in week 6 and the feedback that I gave you in order to make sure that it is being supported throughout. And then also notice the slight differences in the conclusions. I can't stress enough that for the conclusion, please make sure that you answer part B, which states to describe how you have learned, what you have learned about critical thinking, analysis, revision that can be applied to the future writing activities in your academic or professional life. A lot of you missed that last section of the conclusion, and what I highly recommend for you to do is split that apart from the first half of the conclusion. So make the conclusion two different paragraphs, one paragraph for part A and one paragraph for part B. So when you're talking about critical thinking and analysis and revision, these are things that you have learned throughout this term. And it's not necessarily a focus to the article that you read. It's in general. What have you learned about writing in this class? And how can you use that in your academic or professional life? So just make sure that you include that there. So moving on, we're looking at the comparing and contrasting the rubrics. One of the things that I want to start off with is what's actually on top of the rubric, in the little passage there. With your first draft, you only needed 1 to 2 pages in length. Now for your final draft, you have 3 to 4 pages in length, and that's just because this is the final version. You've included more information, more support. You've included the thesis, feedback that I've included for you to improve in. So that's very important to look at length. In addition to that, in the first draft, you did not need to use MLA or APA format. And now in the A4 final draft, that is a requirement. And I've included an extensive amount of help with that in my announcements, in which I'll go over in a bit. And then finally, so let's take a look at this rubric. You'll notice that some of the points, the critical elements, have stayed the same, like the introduction overview, the body intent, body paragraphs. But there are a few things that have changed in terms of wording and how you're being graded. It was, I believe, 175 points for your first draft, and now if I'm correct, it's 225. It will say it in the assignment, in the grade book. So just notice the distinct difference. It also adds another category. So here on the left side of the 5-3 first draft, you had proficient, needs improvement, not evident. And now in the final draft, you have exemplary, proficient, needs improvement, not evident. The point values have also changed slightly. And one of the big point values that has changed is the lessons learned paragraph. So in the first draft, it was worth 15 points, and in the final draft, it is worth 24 points. So it's a huge part of your grade to make sure that you explain to me what you have learned this term in terms of writing, critical analysis, and critical thinking, analysis, and so forth, and how you're going to use that in your academic or professional life. So please make sure that you include that in there. In the past, I have had students who forget to completely include that in their final draft. And I have had students where their grade went from an A to a C because they forgot that very important information there. In addition to that, the introduction changes in the claim. Now it is very specific to the thesis, because you should now know how to write a thesis and have written the thesis for your essay. Just again, I'll be checking citations now, all right, very specifically, because you should be using them in either MLA or APA, given your which one you chose. All right, now in the same place that you got this presentation, I'm actually going to be uploading a student example of the A4 final draft, in which I have gone through and included key guiding evidence that shows what your final essay should look like, and they're in yellow comments along the student draft. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. What these little boxes do is they go over very similar things that we have done in this presentation, and that is my essay following the assignment directions and the rubric and the overview and the prompt and so forth. So it's very important for you to do that. As we move closer to the end of this presentation, I do want to make an important note. You are not writing a new critical analysis essay. To revise your first draft means you're improving it to make the necessary changes to make it into a presentable final draft. What this also means is what I had said before at the beginning. You have, in the last 3 weeks, learned new information, new ways of writing. You've learned how to write a thesis. So my expectations have changed from the first draft to the final draft. So you should be adding in new information, making your first draft a lot better, and following my assignment directions to prove to me that yes, you have learned quite a lot in the last 3 weeks of how to write an essay. All right, so I just wanted to make that very clear. Okay, so moving on, feedback and resources. I will be posting an announcement right after I post this announcement with this presentation, linking all of the resources that I have included in my announcements and in my feedback this term. And that is so that way you can have everything in one announcement versus having to scroll down through tons of announcements to find it. This will include my guidance presentations, student examples, exemplary examples, other resources, templates on MLA and APA, guiding information, things like that. And then you'll want to make sure that you are using the feedback that I've given you in all of your assignments, as well as the modules and everything that was included there as well. And finally, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm happy to help. And remember that we also have some awesome academic support tutors available at SNHU to help you 24/7. And that's pretty much it. I really look forward to reading your final drafts.